So I'm Michelle. I work with Billy at Cosmos and work also at Full Node. Some of you I know, some of you I don't know, but thanks for coming. We're also going to be recording, so you'll have this to watch after. But we're going to start with 4 presentations, which I think most of you all know. We'll have Matt up first, then we'll have Centrifuge, then we'll have Mintbase, and then we'll have Billy. And then we'll have like some updates from some projects, or if you guys are working on things and want to share a quick update, and then we'll move on to a panel. So, and also feel free to ask questions during, because we want it to be fun and lively. So I will hand it over to Matt to get us started.
Thank you. Let me figure out how the stopwatch on a phone works. Okay, cool. Hey, I'm Matt. My job today is to sort of add context and then talk about what I'm doing, but mostly add context about like sort of why we're here, why digital scarcity and digital ownership is interesting at all, and sort of like what that means, and sort of give context for the last 2 to 3 years, or 10, depending on how you look at it, of the sort of invention of digital scarcity. And so that's like kind of the big deal, is actually that digital scarcity traditionally doesn't exist on the web. We have lived the last 30 years, well, minus 10 for Bitcoin, in a world in which digital things cannot be scarce. That's like kind of wild. We've all internalized this. It's sort of obvious that digital things can't be scarce. Right-click, save as, like bits aren't scarce. And we've sort of built our society, our digital society, our real world analog society around this assumption that digital things can't be scarce. But 10 years ago, we realized that, of course, they can, using blockchain, blah, blah, blah. We all know what that is. And that's the real innovation of Bitcoin, is just digital scarcity. And by proxy, the ability to own a digitally scarce thing using public key cryptography. Those are the really crazy bits, because society, what happens when a society discovers digital scarcity? In a world, like we've transitioned from a world in which nothing can be scarce to we can make whatever the hell we want scarce. That's a big jump. And we're still figuring out like what that means. But that's the general idea, is that, the first thing we did with digital scarcity is invent money, because we're humans, we like that shit. But money is like the least interesting thing to do with scarcity, I think. And what's interesting is that, the vast majority of things we own, obviously in the real world, are scarce. This desk is not the same as another desk, like this phone is different from another one. None of that is true digitally, but now we have the building blocks of being able to make some of that true. And so what are those really interesting bits about the real world that rely on scarcity, that rely on ownership to make them happen? A lot of that is sort of up, nobody really knows, and people are trying to figure that out. Most of the things that we own digitally, we don't really own. We all kind of know that, right? Everything is sort of on loan from someone else's servers. The cloud is just someone else's computer. But it's kind of wild that we accept that. It's like kind of wild, right? If we walked around the world and didn't actually own anything, for example, your house is just sort of guaranteed to you by the HOA or something, and it's like, when you buy this house, you sign a document that says, I don't own any of this. But you're like, no, I totally own that. Like, we wouldn't be okay with that. We wouldn't be okay with the pseudo ownership, renting forever situation, but we are digitally. That's how your identity works. That's how your money works. That's how everything, your memes, all the way down the stack, that's how it all works in, the world before Bitcoin. But now we have the ability to actually own our digital stuff, from your identity to your money to whatever you want it is. Because we own a lot of stuff. Like, people like things, right? And now that we can own digital things, what does that mean? It should be sort of expected, I think, in the future, that we actually do own these digital things that we think we do own today. And so that's sort of inevitable to me, is this concept of true digital ownership. And that's why I'm very excited about it, is because it lets us bring these properties, these systems in the real world that rely on scarcity and ownership into the digital world in ways that ideally make good things and ideally don't bring over the like bad versions of scarcity, or rather the bad effects of scarcity, which we see around the world. Yeah, generally that's what's super exciting to me, is this huge opportunity of having a world in which knows no scarcity, and now we have the ability to do whatever we want. We can architect it. The digital world is completely, made up. We made all this shit up. So you can do really anything. And for me, a lot of that stems towards sort of solving commons problems or monetization problems, sustaining the arts, for example. I think it's totally possible to use this introduction of scarcity to, for example, make sure that art is more sustainable online. Online creativity is more of a sustainable process where you don't need, for example, with advertising, you need 50,000, as a minimum really, people to like look at your stuff on the daily to hit minimum wage. You can totally, I think, get that lower with subscriptions, obviously, but you can go even further using, I think, piggybacking on human emotion and attaching themselves to memorabilia, sort of in the same way that band t-shirts work, or accumulating experiences work, in that you're not really paying for the access to the thing. Well, you are. When you go to, let me try this again. So what's interesting about creative monetization is that it generally relies on a severe number of people looking at your stuff. The goal, I think, should not be to get as many eyes on your things as possible, but to find the 1,000 or so people who really like your stuff to support you in a way that feels natural and is totally like meaningful to everyone involved. And that, I don't think that means sending people money at the click of a button whenever you like their Twitter post. I think it should feel a bit more human, a bit more natural, a bit more emotional. And so one example is, I think, what's interesting, an interesting application of digital scarcity is the idea of digitally scarce stickers as reactions to things. And so what you can do is take these digital GIFs, images, whatever have you, they represent an emotion. And as a creator, you can give them to your audience, you can sell them, you can auction them, whatever you want to do to distribute them, much like a band t-shirt, much like exclusive digital downloads, however you want to do that. But what that gives the audience is one, memorabilia, and that's a really important part of memorabilia, is being able to own it, feeling ownership, feeling this sort of tangible effect of having this thing. And then what's interesting about stickers is that they're also reactions. They have this tiny little bit of utility baked into them, the ability to express an emotion, for lack of a better word. And so that's a really interesting thing, because what you can then do is bake a micropayment economy into these scarce stickers. If you make each sticker worth like a cent or something, as people are reacting, trading these stickers around, they're not created or destroyed, they're just sent from one person to another. You're moving money via emotion. And that's like really, really interesting. And so theoretically, if you find 1,000 people who really like your stuff and just happen to react a lot to what you're doing, you can make minimum wage with less people, because we're now measuring not just eyeballs, where all eyeballs are valued the same, but emotional support, and that is different from person to person. And so that's one of the things that I'm playing with, called stickers. Right now it's on Twitch. You can check it out if you're a Twitch streamer or no one who wants to like experiment with rare digital animated reaction things. Check that out. What's also interesting about digital scarcity and digital ownership is the sort of paradigm shift around art, which everyone is sort of aware of, but I think is really, really cool. It's because, traditionally digital artists are undervalued compared to analog medium artists. And I think a lot of that stems from the lack of scarcity in their work, because traditionally we don't really delineate access and ownership on the web. On the web, they're the same ideas. If you see something, it's the same as owning it. People just don't understand the concept of owning a digital thing, because we couldn't have. There's no way to have done that before. But now that you can start delineating between access and ownership. And that means that assuming we can get humans to feel ownership of digital things, feel meaning in these digital things, now you have the ability to value digital artists on par with analog medium artists. And that's really exciting, because that's a huge, swath of the population who currently need to rely on advertising or subscriptions, or however you do fund your work. But it ends up being, the 1% who can make digital artistry work. And that's really unfortunate. And so if you can sort of combined with something like stickers, where you sort of flatten that curve, democratize access to this sort of efficient or natural monetization mechanism, that's really fantastic. And more people can have more sustainable, more sustainable work. But in general, that's kind of the cool stuff, is we have scarcity. What are we going to do with it? There are, let's see. As you can see, I prepared exactly 5 minutes for this. But yeah, and so we launched a gallery for art. And I think this is interesting because traditionally galleries are very dependent on three-dimensional space for showcasing their things. Physical art works best in the real world because of course it does. Digital art, however, does not work super well in the three-dimensional world because it's two-dimensional. It's meant to be experienced on a two-dimensional screen or in VR, AR, however the work is produced. But that's really interesting because there's no good environment for experiencing two-dimensional art on the web. You can go into a VR situation and look at art, but that's not really natural. It's very intentional, it's very forced. It doesn't have the same properties as the actual, how we experience art on the daily. And so we set about to create a sort of a translation of the experience of a gallery and bring that to the web, sort of take what makes a gallery interesting, the magic space, charging for entry, there's this social layer involved where people know each other from different showings, whatever all of that is, break that down and then reconstitute it in the web's image. So it doesn't look like a three-dimensional space, it's two-dimensional. It has a social layer, but it's not like text chat, it's audio chat, where every work you can just comment on it to whoever happens to be there as well. Stuff like that. And that's sort of another experiment that we're working on. It's called the dot.gallery, dot.gallery. We did our showing last week, ran for a week. We did this thing where every 4 hours, for 4 hours, a show would be on, which creates time-based scarcity, so people will be there ideally at the same time and can talk to each other. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been working on and what I've been thinking about recently is sort of, that paradigm shift. What do you do with it? The web has no scarcity. Everything is architected. We can really do whatever the hell we want. And so what are the cool bits about the world that revolve around scarcity and ownership that you can reapply to the web and create interesting systems? I also podcast at this thing called Digitally Rare. Please listen. We talk about NFTs with the amazing Jonathan Mann, who is the Song a Day man, who's been writing a song every day for the last 10 years, and is a really awesome co-host. But yeah, that's digital scarcity. Thank you. I guess if anyone has a question, I can do that. Yes.
Yeah, so my name is Giorgio. I actually did go to the dot.gallery.
Oh, hell yeah.
I really enjoyed it. It was a new experience. I really like the way you guys set it up. But I do, so the reason why I went there is because some of the artists that I like, Xcopy and Osiris, they were talking about it, right?
Yeah.
But I originally saw that because I also am excited about CryptoVoxel. That's that 3D space that you were talking about. And I actually think that experience is excellent. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the dot.gallery. I actually really liked it. I like the whole way that you guys did it, but I also really like the way that they set up the galleries within CryptoVoxel. I think that, They don't have, I guess, they don't have like, an ability to chart entry.
Right. You could actually.
I guess they could eventually.
Yeah. No, totally. I guess to summarize, it's about the sort of comparison between the dot.gallery and CryptoVoxels, which has a gallery, many galleries actually within it, one of them being like the winding gallery, and so on. And I think that's right. And so I think the three-dimensional approach is the most obvious. It's sort of like, it's supernatural. It's like, we have these digital works, they need to be experienced in a digital medium, but we lose when you just put them on a web page in a list. You lose so much of the experience that the 3D world like gave you for free, AKA in the digital world, we don't really have the concept of a wall that is just like naturally there to put art on, right? Like your Facebook page is a wall, but you can't like just put art there, right? It's that metaphor doesn't exist digitally. But in CryptoVoxels, of course it does, because it's just 3D space digitally. And so you sort of shortcut the whole problem by recreating three-dimensional space in VR. And that totally works. And as soon as we all live in the multiverse, that's gonna work perfectly. But until then, I think the vast majority of people are looking at two-dimensional screens and working on two-dimensional surfaces and are generally not like, they don't have a VR thing in their pocket all the time. And so it's sort of a question around, instead of being skeuomorphic about how we look at art, 3D space, digital 3D space, wondering how we can translate those properties. Things like, you have this sort of pseudo presence of people around you when you're in a museum. Everyone's sort of quiet. This is the magic space I was talking about. Everyone's sort of around but not interacting, but you could interact with them. It's like it's an interesting property of this space that you get for free with walls and a ceiling. Can you create that similar property or whatever you want from it digitally without relying on three-dimensional space? So that's what we're trying to experiment with.
Yeah,
but totally.
I personally think that like there could be many different methods of being able to
100%.
art. I mean, I think
100%.
that the way that you guys curated that exhibit, I thought it was really interesting. The way that you kind of like tracked your movements and then created a token or something.
Totally. Yeah, that's actually hyper relevant to NFTs. I totally forgot to mention that. The gallery is traversed. It's an XY sort of plane, and you traverse between each room just by moving your keyboard and viewing the work, and it uses physically based gestures or spring animations to move things back and forth. But what's cool is as you're transitioning through the space, you create your own journey, and it maps it out for you in the corner. And then as soon as you're done, once you've exited, you can tokenize that and collect it as this little memorabilia that exists to sort of to condense your experience into this one object. And that's super, super interesting, is this condensation of experience into an object, making this ephemeral thing tangible, I think is a really good theme for the whole digital scarcity space. Oh yeah, I was gonna talk about metaphors, but I've got like 2 minutes. I didn't say the word NFT at all during this. I hope not. I shouldn't have. Because I think calling things NFTs and using the word fungibility is a massive distraction to what's actually happening here, which is it's a medium for making scarce digital things that happen to be unique or not, right? And so it's really interesting to me to not think of it in economic terms. Instead of thinking of minting and burning and trading and tokenizing, to instead think of them as just digitally owned things. They are just things that you own digitally. And that's as much as it needs to be, right? Because once you start talking about scarce digital things, you need to get into the context of what is this, like why do people have it, why do they want it, what makes it meaningful, because that's hard as well, is like what makes any of these digital things meaningful. And that's the same problem that physical things have, right? Like, why is this meaningful? I don't know. You can pour water out of it, so it's got some utility. Perhaps it's been around the space for a long time, and I really like the space, so I'd like to take something home with me, so I take this with me. And now this is my little condensation of experience in an object. Oh, it actually has water in it. And so making these things feel meaningful is still up in the air, because again, we can make up whatever we want. The hard part is making people care about it. And on that nicely tweetable line, I will end.
I have a quick question.
Oh, yes.
So when you're talking about the dot.gallery and getting artists interested, how much, in terms of like outside of blockchain, right? And so you don't want to use NFT, you're talking.
Totally.
How do you get the artists to participate, and how are you getting these people outside of the blockchain space to accept this idea? Like, what are the selling points, and how are you marketing it to them?
Totally. With the dot.gallery, at least with the MVP, the first version, we didn't really do anything with tokenizing works or anything. And so for that reason, we were able to work with these really awesome artists who come from the traditional world. One of them, Daniel Rinaldi, who's like collected by the MoMA. And we juxtaposed his work with like crypto favorites like Autoglyphs and Max Osiris. And so that's sort of like something we would like to do, but I don't know. For artists, I think the big selling point is around monetization, ownership of works and ownership of rights, and the whole sort of like the general properties that you get from digital scarcity and owning a digital thing just are useful in the art world, like perfect provenance, a perfect history of who's had this thing, super valuable. Just the idea of having a title, a right to this thing that doesn't rely on paper is like really good. And so those are the general properties that I think bring artists into the space, plus like more creative monetization mechanisms like continuous royalties, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Yes.
I just have an example for what she's talking about right
Totally.
now. So to condense my story as short as possible, I was in a Airbnb and I met a guy who was from Venezuela. And obviously we talk about Venezuela a lot in crypto, but this dude was basicly essentially a refugee in the United States. He couldn't go back to Venezuela, and so he told me his whole story. I learned later that he was actually an artist, and he was a musician. He did photography. He did all like these other things, and he didn't know anything about crypto. And so obviously I started talking to him about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, do you know that you can actually now you can convert your pieces of art into something that you could sell to people who are interested? Because I saw his pieces of work and they were excellent. And I was like, I would love to have a piece of your art and put it in my crypto voxel gallery. I would just love to have that. I would pay you X amount of dollars if you just did that, right? If you just took one of your pieces and did it, and then I could put it in my gallery or whatever. He got really excited about it. He was like, oh wow, I'm gonna get 5 pieces, and I'm gonna we're gonna try to work through this, and we're gonna submit his things to I think it was like super rare system. Right. And but it was like it was not difficult to sell that to him. Like, he was excited about it. Totally. And especially him being Venezuelan, I'm like, dude, like if you know any artists in Venezuela that also are producing, like I'm sure he knows plenty of people that are talented over there that would like a source of income that's other than their shitty currency that they have, right? Sure. And he was like, yeah, absolutely, I would love to have that. And so that was not just providing that information to guys like that, like I think it's really it's not difficult, and they're super receptive, and there's a lot of skill out there, and a lot of artists that are they're unable to do anything right now because they're stuck in these countries. No, totally. And they can still produce, and they can still sell it to people who are interested.
No, totally. Thank you for that story. I'd agree. Democratization of access to things like monetization / this medium in general is a big theme. Absolutely. Cool. I think I'm done. Cool. Cheers, y'all.
Next up, we have Charly. Do you That's good. And you didn't even bring out, Matt, the chip in your hand, but we can talk about that later. We can save it for the panel maybe, but yeah.
I put an NFT on my hand because it's art. You can scan my hand with an NFT chip or with an NFC reader, and it's got my favorite Clover on it, the spooky boy. That's it. That's the entire art piece. It's not useful.
No, but it is kind of scary to think about us all having chips inside. It's not him.
Otherwise, it's the one there. Big small.
Is that good? Can you all see?
To take this off of the presenter view. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and I work at Centrifuge. I'm sorry, I'm going to say NFT like 5,000 times in this presentation. But yeah, I work at Centrifuge as an engineer at the moment. I'm working on Tinlake, which I'll talk about later. But before I became an engineer, I was working in intellectual property law, so my background is in law. So for me, actually, NFTs are very interesting because I think we have had a pretty strong legal regime in the past of ways that we try to protect intangible assets or digital assets. Obviously, there are a lot of problems with that regime, and a lot of that was also due to these technical limitations of how can we capture digital assets that are not scarce. So yeah, NFTs are a real technical innovation. One thing I guess my talk will be on the other side of the spectrum really is because I think it is very important to talk about how digital ownership does interact with the real world. So I know, Matt, you said previously, it should just end with digital ownership, but I think how we establish value and how we take NFTs out of the context of crypto to DeFi and to traditional financing is pretty much, that's what I'm talking about today. And that's what I'm pretty excited about. So. My talk is going to be what do NFTs mean for us? By us, I mean Centrifuge and what we're building and how we plan to take them to the DeFi ecosystem and beyond. So a little bit about what we do. This is our overall mission, changing the rules of global trade to foster economic opportunity everywhere. And what we mean by that is two things. So we built an operating system. It allows you to exchange documents. Primarily, we work with financial documents, private, secure, and verifiable ways. These documents are then unalterable. We anchor them on Ethereum blockchain, and it's a single source of truth for all parties. And we then tokenize or place these documents into NFTs, and we allow the people who own these documents to then access financing. So specifically, what that means in a use case is something like this. So we have an artist. Let's say this artist is issuing an invoice for a royalty invoice for whatever it is they've produced. Unfortunately, in the EU, there's something called a collecting agency called GEMA, they control all royalties for artists. It's an unfortunate business model because that means the artist, in order to get their money, most of the time has to go through these agencies. So what they can do, what they have to do now is a very centralized way of submitting invoices, etc. But through our network, what this could possibly look like, we would like to replace Gamo with maybe some other funder. But what it looks like in our network would be something like the artist has this royalty invoice, it's a document. They exchange this document on a peer-to-peer network. We use libp2p as our tech layer for that. We use that because it's off-chain, and so you can transact documents. Maybe some documents are more sensitive than others for privacy concerns. The documents are hashed, and then the Merkle tree, the hash of this Merkle tree is anchored on the Ethereum blockchain. So that means you have this kind of immutable chain of all the versions and updates of your documents throughout the history of time to the first version of the document. It's this kind of provenance chain that, that Matt brought up previously. And at the same time, from this document, you can also mint an NFT. And this NFT is then also an immutable source of truth for any given state of your document at any given point in time. In this case, we would mint an NFT from an unpaid invoice. So for us, what NFTs mean are these kind of on-chain representations of real-world assets. And we work really with physical, like real-world assets. Invoices, anything that has a statement of value. So if in the case, yeah, it's a tire, a supplier, and a big car, it's another use case, but same thing. If you want to take this asset from the invoice, unpaid invoice NFT to any of these current existing DeFi protocols, there's kind of a missing step. So we have the invoice, we have the unpaid invoice NFT, but between the NFT and, let's say, Maker or Compound or any of these other lending protocols, which, stable coins, exchanges, etc., there's a big problem because currently, DeFi doesn't actually speak NFT. So none of the DeFi protocols right now really engage with NFTs. You can't just take your NFT and take out a loan with DAI against it. You can't really, you can exchange your NFTs privately between addresses, but you can't really, DeFi doesn't scale to this kind of single asset level. They only scale to ERC20s. So when we realized this, we realized that we had to actually develop our own bridge in a way. So we've been working on something called Tinlake, which is the product that I'm and others are working on at the moment. And Tinlake is a system of smart contracts. It basically serves as the underwriting, asset pricing, and NFT to ERC20 conversion vehicle that we use to be able to translate NFT to the DeFi ecosystem. So that what that means is like you can take your NFT. In this case, the borrower, what we're talking about is not necessarily the individual artists, but rather, like for example, we work now with a company called Paperchain, and they manage many artists, or they have many artists coming to them, and the services that they offer for the artists is basically, okay, we will take your invoices, we'll put them, we'll tokenize your invoices, and we will be able to take out loans for you against the value of your invoice. So let's say you have a royalty payment that's only due in a cycle of 60 days, but obviously you need to make your rent. So you can take your invoice to Paperchain, and they serve as kind of a master borrower. They run a deployment of Tinlake, which then tokenizes the royalty NFTs. These NFTs are put into the Tinlake ecosystem. So we have an NFT deposit contract, many contracts underneath. There is an admin module which basically serves to verify that the value of the invoice is accurate, and obviously this is also managed by Paperchain. And internally, we also create something that we call a CVT. So it's a collateral value token. This is the ERC20. This is actually what DeFi understands. This CVT goes out to, for example, Maker, who we work with quite extensively at the moment, and then they can take out a stable coin. They can take out DAI. This stable coin passes back through Tinlake, and in the end of the day, the artist is all of this is abstracted for the artist. They only know that they're putting in an NFT and they're getting out a stable coin. But what they don't realize is that there is this massive conversion process happening. under the hood. So so for us, I mean, we've gone through in the very basic idea, kind of happy vision in the beginning was, let's revolutionize financing, access to financing. Let's make this decentralized. But as you can see over the course of that journey, we ran into several issues, a lot of which were rooted not only in technical, but also in real life problems in legal frameworks. So one big problem which we faced was that for DeFi, a transfer of NFT means a transfer of this digital asset that you own. But for fiat finance, an NFT transfer, it doesn't have any of the legal or regulatory frameworks to support a legal claim to your asset. So that means, if you're an artist and you transfer your NFT as collateral against the DAI, if they don't pay you, you can't take it to court, and no one's going to enforce that for you at the moment. Obviously, for us, that's a big problem because we want to help these people, and we, just giving them a promise that the NFT is going to be valued by someone is not necessarily, works for some cases, but taking it and really scaling it, you need something more concrete. So what we have done is established several legal entities. So we call, these are called SPVs. Most of our assets originate in the US, so our SPVs are mainly also in the US, but obviously SPV would be established in whichever jurisdiction. So in the EU, they can be established in Denmark, in Asia, et cetera, et cetera. And SPV, this is the complicated definition, is the subsidiary of a company which is protected from the parent company, financial risk. It's a legal entity created for a limited business acquisition or transaction, or it can be used as a funding structure. So what that actually means for us concretely is that we have these SPVs, for example, Paperchain, this artist royalty use case. We create one with them. It doesn't belong to Centrifuge or Paperchain. It's kind of like a child of both. If either one of us goes down, this is still an independent vehicle that exists. And this is the SPV which is then associated with each Tinlake deployment, and which kind of provides the legal warranties and legal backing for all of these transactions that we make. So we actually do have legal claims then for the deals that we're making over the project. The other issue that we face with NFTs, which we are in the process of solving, but it's not completely there yet, is privacy. So obviously we try to handle most of our document transactions on the peer-to-peer layer because, as we all know, everything on blockchain is public. If you have metadata on your NFT, stuff that might be valuable for assessing, like how much it's worth, the amount, the due date, some of this might actually be private information that you don't want associated with your identity online. So this will be revealed if you put it on an NFT. So we are in the process of working on zero-knowledge NFTs, and we have created a proof of concept version of that, which we presented at the most recent ZCon. We also talked about it at DAppCon and Web3. But if you want to check out our Medium article or the GitHub repost, I think it's a bit of a complicated topic to talk about now. But yeah, we're in the process of working on this, and we are pretty excited about the possibilities that can have for really scaling transfer of documents, transfer of assets on NFT. So yeah, to this abstract drawing. So this is the happy birthday NFT card that I've put together with our designer. It's a happy birthday. I guess maybe they're 10 or 3, I don't know, depending on the age. There are a lot of developmental milestones that have been achieved, but obviously, whether or not it's a 3-year-old or a 10-year-old, they still have a long way to go. I think we see that they have come a long way, but that there is still a long way to go. But at Centrifuge, obviously, we're pretty excited. I think we're just excited by the opportunities that this growth process can offer us for being able to really influence how they grow and how they evolve. And we're excited to see how it will happen. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Do the SPVs act as appraisal as well? Or is it just the legal protection and the appraisal is done by a third party? Or what is that process of actually translating NFTs to a fungible token quantity?
So right now we have appraisal contract, which is, I mean, it depends on how you want to set up the admin structure, because each deployment of like, it's not that we have one master deployment that is that you interact with, that all the projects interact with. It's each kind of project. So for example, Paperchain has a deployment, or this real estate company has a deployment, or et cetera, et cetera. So whoever they want to set as the admin, an Oracle kind of person that can do the appraisal of the value for the invoice, obviously because they are the ones who are engaging in the borrowing process in the end of the day, they would have the best system for that. We also foresee a potential for a system where this can be more decentralized with maybe a price feed aggregated from various sources. But I mean, for now, given the kind of niche scope of the projects, we have it running through a contract. Yeah.
And it's the responsibility of the SPV to be accurate on that, and also to be able to back up the value that it claims to have inside that in case the invoice doesn't get paid or something like that. They become the legally responsible party.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is really interesting. I'm just a little bit confused. I try to understand these concepts from a purely practical perspective. Like what problem is this actually solving for like an artist? Is it collections, or is it just like royalty? And what would the process be of actually, like, you know, they would go to you and they say, okay, I have a piece of art and like we want to, like, you're going to solve this problem that I have that I'm not, I mean, it could just be my ignorance of like the art business, but like I'm just not 100% clear like what exactly it's doing and how, you know, it's helping people.
I think it's two sides. So one is, I think the most immediate one is access to financing. Like invoice financing is a pretty common business model for a lot of small to medium-sized enterprises, just because they do have these kind of 30 to 90-day repayment times for invoices. But I think a lot of those platforms are quite, I mean, a lot of them have a kind of turnover bottom limit where they say, okay, you're too small and we don't care about serving your financing needs. So either it's access to financing because of the volume of invoices you have, or for example, it's where you are. So like if you're in Venezuela, if you're in South Africa, if you're in any of these places, a lot of those countries may not necessarily have invoice financing at all, where the people would like to have that.
So are you saying like you're wanting to create a mechanism for people to borrow against invoices, like AR, like accounts receivable, like, hey, I have all these items that I sold and I want to borrow against it because I need to be able to pay my operating costs. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And I mean, that's why we're really focused on the DeFi ecosystem, because I think we feel that provides the most potential for access to finance outside of traditional kind of finance. I mean, traditional financing exists, but that's not really what we're trying to tackle at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting concept. I mean, I just have another question, like how big is like art financing like as a market?
I mean, I wouldn't be able to answer that, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know about art financing.
Is it specifically about art, or is it just like any accounts receivable?
No, I mean, so our current projects we have ongoing. We have 2 invoices from conferences, kind of like conference invoice. One supply chain. So the supply chain one, I mean, I can go on further, but we have an idea called deep tier financing. I didn't talk about it here, but that's kind of one of the big things we also focus on. It's transfer of basically trust and value along a supply chain, so that you can get better financing rates from maybe someone who is at the end of a supply chain versus an external bank who has no idea about your, But and we have also 2 real estate, so kind of mortgage / refurbish, like house renovation type of assets.
So like real estate would make perfect sense. Like you want to take a loan against your house, and so you have an appraiser go out there and just appraise your house, and somebody gives you die.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
but then how would if you default on that, that's the mechanism that you're saying is difficult because you need an actual entity to go and collect that house.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Just for the SPV part, so you guys have to enter into a contract with the other organization, but the other organization could also be a collective or like a co-op of people. So like owners within a home, like a housing complex, could also do an SPV with you?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely, I mean, if you get really nitty gritty, there's restrictions on who can enter into SPV. Yeah, so, yeah, but it also depends on the jurisdiction you're in, you know. Like in the States, it's a subsidiary of a company.
Would any aspect of the software prevent somebody from just regurgitating like payday loans or predatory loan systems? Because that's still just the SPV's choice about what the rate is and what the appraisal is. So the software is pretty much agnostic to that level.
Yeah, I mean, we don't control the appraisals or risk. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of outside the scope of what we can do at the moment. I think that there are a lot of regulatory schemes about that for payday loans. In regards to how much we sync our contracts with the regulations, we haven't worked on that aspect yet.
Sorry. In terms of SPV token, every SPV token will kind of have its own value as well, right?
So the token that we use within the SPV, the CVT, this collateral value token, that's the same right now for all Tinlake deployments, and you can think about it more like accounting units, like for a balance book. So it's not something that leaves the Tinlake ecosystem. It's just something that we use. We use it we use a token because we need a ERC20 token to interact with Maker, for example. But this token doesn't actually leave Tinlake, so you don't withdraw CVTs at any point. You just use them for conversion.
But if I had, say, there were tons of, now I forgot the acronym, CVT. Mm-hmm. There are tons of CVTs who are doing a terrible job appraising, and they all are unable to sort of pay the underlying value. And each of them basically also folds. The value of CVT as a whole would really suffer from this configuration. And
I mean, the value of CVT, like I said, it doesn't really exist outside of Tinlake. So see, it's not like a publicly traded token or anything.
But it would go into as collateral for a Maker, I thought.
Yeah, exactly. But Maker governance also has their own whitelisting mechanism for example, Maker doesn't necessarily have to take every single SPV asset. That's, like multi-collateral DAI also has, for the first iteration, only a few assets that they're taking. For these individual cases, we have talked very closely to them about whether or not they feel this asset is stable and or valuable enough for them to work with. So, I mean, I guess the point is there are many points of centralization in an otherwise more decentralized space. But for us, these are kind of like necessary points of trust in a way. Like you need to, at the end of the day, trust someone to make a value judgment about something, whether or not it's the Maker funders who, they want to fund only valuable things, right? So.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we've got Nate.
All right, I'm going to show you guys a whole bunch of stuff, live demos, things I just actually got hooked up today, so things are going to break and it's going to be a little fun. Let me make sure all my stuff's up and running. Cool. All right. My company is Mintbase. I'm the developer and the guy who found it. So, without further ado, has anyone seen these guys? These little chilies? A couple people have seen the weird little chilies. All right, so the chili is, has anybody heard of the Meta Cartel? So the Meta Cartel, long story short, they forked the Moloch DAO, and basically they have this conference. What's really, really neat is during Berlin Blockchain Week, we launched our company with the Meta Cartel. They ended up minting over 260 of these non-fungible tokens. All of them were these weird little chilies. What's unique about it is, as far as I can find, this is the biggest conference and gathering that was ever done where 100% of the sales was done through non-fungible tokens. Through our smart contract, the minter made over $6,000. I made, I think, a total of like $54 through my 1% fee. I can eat a steak dinner by myself, which is quite neat. But proving the concept was the fascinating aspect. So what's neat about that is now we have a gathering of a bunch of people. I have none of their emails. I have none of their personal information, first name, last name, but they're all holding this asset. So the fact that this conference is done is just the beginning of the fun. So let's see. What also was neat was that all of these people redeemed these tokens through our platform using all the different browsers that they'd want. The details real bad, but basically they had their NFTs on Opera, Trust Wallet, I'mToken, Coinbase Wallet, Alpha Wallet, and we did that entire process, which I'll show you in just a minute how we actually saw that process go. But essentially, we created a way for in your dApp browser, you would basically load up and show whether or not you had that. So I'm going to show you something even. All right, let me track time. I think I got on here, 3 minutes ago? So, yeah. All right. Well, what Mintbase actually is, it is a minting and allocation tool. So you can come onto this little platform. You can create your own smart contracts. There's like 5 different buttons on this entire application. So I tried to make it as simple as possible. You create and deploy your own smart contracts. This is going to evolve over time. But think of a smart contract as like a directory. If you want to have multiple different non-fungible tokens all bound to one smart contract, each one of these are their own unique little smart contract. You can see here's the smart contract hash. If we want, we can go into Joe's Coffee Shop. And it loads, woo, these are all non-fungible tokens. When we click mint more, so right now we have six of these, one particular token. So each one of them have their own unique token. Each one of them are bound to this one smart contract. We can go and check all of the different transactions that are done through this one smart contract. If you want to mint a new token, you'd come in here, pop in some neat information, name, description, upload an image. But for time's sake, can everyone see that 6? There's a 6 there. You can see the 6? Trust me. So mint more. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna crank this up a bit. All the information's already there. It's pre-populated because we're just minting more. We go into here. We click confirm, and then our 6. If all goes really well, this is over local, so it's gonna go a lot faster. Now we're at 15. So you can see as it grows. So what I'm going to show you today, which I think is really fascinating, I literally got this working today. So let's say hypothetically I have a new conference that I'm going to be doing ticketing for. Let's see. Okay. So what if these guys said, hey, Nate, I think we should put your tickets on our website. How would we do that? I asked them, well, what's your website? Do you have a developer doing your thing? And he said, no, it's through HubSpot CMS. Do you guys know HubSpot? Do you guys know Squarespace? So same sort of theory, WordPress, Squarespace, all those sorts. So this is HubSpot. They have a guy who just goes in. When we click this little buy ticket thing, it loads up the sweet modal. We're still in this NFT.nyc. We see this is a bunch of Eventbrite stuff, right? So if we crank in 2, we say get 2 tickets. But these tickets aren't even that great because once you go to the conference, you're done using the ticket, right? Oh man, what is that? $29 in fees? That's insane, right? For 2 tickets, we're paying $30 in fees. So what if these guys were like, hey, Nate, I think we should have a secondary little thing on our website right here that basically loads up Mintbase tickets so that people can have the option to have this neat, new, unique, non-fungible token because there's a ton of incentives that goes behind it that they create. And so I'm going to talk real loud. So basically, I just said, okay, cool. I became an expert in HubSpot's CMS. I learned how they did all this stuff, and you can create your own little custom modules. So I just said, all right, well, here's this fun little code. All you have to do is basically load this and load this. So everybody knows why YouTube became spread like wildfire, right? YouTube, you could upload videos and that was really neat, but it wasn't until you started having that embed script that you can just take the YouTube videos and stick it on your own website. So what I'm doing is exactly that with non-fungible tokens. You can see they even allow you to do some CSS. It just has the color is white, the border is solid. So this is an ugly website, but just to prove the concept, I created this on HubSpot and have this little buy NFT button that I just created through that. And now you're able to actually see the NFTs on that website. So what that is they went in here, they minted some tickets, hypothetically. I click my market. So actually, oh man, this would be crazy if I could do this real quick. Let's mint a new token. Let's just call this the block, and we'll call this the dirt. We'll crank up and do a couple of these. We'll set a price of 1. We'll upload a neat image of a cloud. These are really pretty clouds. So we've now created this. We're gonna mint some more. All right, so, whoa, that happened really quick. I might have broken it. I didn't break it, but I have to fix the CSS padding. So we're back in the HubSpot piece. If I click buy NFT, now you can see our little cloud NFT is actually showing up in our HubSpot thing. That actually made it really, really ugly. So I'm gonna come in here and just murder this thing. Let's burn this token. Confirm, still working on padding and all sorts of stuff. So I'll come back in here, hopefully this loads, neat, and we still have the cloud. Whoa. Told you things would break. Okay, so on Mintbase, refresh. Oh, I know why. I shouldn't have minted that token, I got cocky. Well, anyways, just say it actually did work. I just, the padding, and it's just up too high, and now it's not gonna be pretty. But the same thing actually happens on Squarespace, where you come in here, you throw some embed code. So that was HubSpot, this is now Squarespace. And we're gonna go into my Squarespace account, which is right here, embed your NFTs. I do a quick refresh. I hit open Mintbase, and now we have this really ugly pattern, but they're there, which is fascinating, right? So if I click the VIP, we can now see that here's the tickets. Here's still my mintbase.squarespace.com. I can go ahead and click buy now. If I go into my other application and if I click buy now, that 5 will automatically go down to a 3 because it's a real-time tracking. Can I do that right now? No, I can't. So we can go in, we can buy through your website because I'm handling all of the interactions with the onboarding, all that sort. Does that make sense? So you're able to basically create a marketplace on Mintbase and embed that marketplace in whatever website you want with just like 5 lines of code. So why that's neat, even if you write your own custom websites, the same stuff, just standard HTML. It's not an iframe, so you're basically importing my React app directly into your application. So that's pretty neat. So the redeeming aspect. So when people were coming in the conference, basically I had this little piece up. So every time someone kept coming in, you would see that 35, go to 36, go to 37. I had one person basically say, you hit a QR code, it loads up into their dApp browser, and then you're able to actually redeem the piece. So let's go ahead and go into this guy, and then go into this. So this is my phone. This was kind of the process of how a person actually checked into the system. So here, this is my normal camera, scanning a QR. There you are, hello people. If I go and do this, it opens up, it deep links. Boom. So I'm not pressing anything, it automatically opens up into basically our validator. It just says, these are all the tickets that I own within my Coinbase wallet, and it checks whether you're A, connected to Web3, B, that you're a good human, and then C, that it's a real ticket. And how I make sure that you're not spoofing the page is, okay, this is my phone, I'm not touching it. Oh, geez. Where'd you go? Come back. Okay, maybe we do this again. It's had enough. How much time do I have left? Cool. So here I'm not pressing anything. So people would basically go in, check into this neat thing. Maybe a new port. I take this to the beach a lot and sand gets stuck in it. So I apologize. Let's go into new movie recording. Okay, third time's a charm. So before it breaks, I'm gonna press this button called Prove It. That basically does that little real ticket. So it checks to say that it's not a spoof page. So what we ended up doing is we basically put several QR codes. We said, here's your Coinbase wallet QR code to hit, here's your Trust wallet to hit. If none of those platforms have deep linking, then just directly hit this URL, which is real simple. It's whatever token you have, r/NFTC, and this is available to everybody right now. It's dynamic. So we had some people loading this page, and to make sure that it was the right page, I would press this fun little button and make sure, it's not on anymore. You get it. So that's that. So now, what's interesting about that is the whole interoperable aspect. So I'm 10 minutes deep in now. That's it? Wow. So it was a really, really neat, unique experience. I think a lot of people, when they talk about NFTs, they talk a lot about ownership and scarcity. What I'm more interested in, I get scarcity. It's the mother of all it's the mother of all innovators, the mother of all innovations. Literally, we're all just like hustling in this world because scarcity exists, or else we'd all be sitting around in the Garden of Eden eating a bunch of, donuts and just having a great time because it'd be like, I want a donut. There's a donut here. But interoperability is super important because that asset was created. So let's say hypothetically that one conference wants to use my tickets, and they say, hey, do you guys have an API to connect into your stuff? And I say the fungible token, non-fungible token itself is the API. You're actually able to just jump into the non-fungible token and get all the resources directly from that non-fungible token. And why that's neat is all of these people, we now have a human mapping of people that have went to this conference. And now we say, here's this neat group of people. If we want to have the meta cartel start talking with, let's say, an RPG game, and they come up with some sort of deal to say, hey, let's anytime you want to trade in a non-fungible token for a sword or something like that, then that's really where I'm pushing, is that this ticket isn't just a ticket. It can do a lot more because other gaming platforms, maybe Full Node starts accepting these tickets for like a 1-week pass while Meta Cartel is doing their thing. It's the fact that we don't have to ask permission of the source to utilize it for neat things later on. Secondary markets was fabulous. I loved watching people on Twitter basically saying, hey, I can't go to the event. I'm going to sell my ticket for 25% off on OpenSea. And that is the show. A lot of people liked it. It was an easy process to actually buy. On my platform, I take a 1% fee if you sell an item. Other than that, you're talking directly with the Ethereum network. Create your own contracts, mint your tokens. If you mint a token on my platform and sell it on OpenSea, I see not a way in that process. I want to get people comfortable with non-fungible tokens, and the goal is to bring value to them, and I think that's it. Allocation. Stuff, market size is actually my VC pitch. Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yeah?
So when you say you had the Meta Cartel and you didn't get any information from any of them, right?
Yeah.
How is that working exactly with it? So I'm coming from a perspective from marketing, right? So
Sure.
The whole basis is I want to get information about people, or
Yep.
at least be able to learn about them. So how exactly?
That's your new weird job that you're gonna have to figure out.
Okay.
So you get to figure out how to communicate with these people, incentivize them to go do something else, and we're in this new experimental world of, I think this is definitely the right direction. I see NFT sites asking for first name, last name, username, all that stuff. Like, my app is just a shell that says, hey, are we connected to Web3 or not? If it is connected to Web3, then use my app as you need to and talk directly with the Ethereum network. I don't know. I think that now we have a direct human mapping of people where you can communicate with them by airdropping other weird tokens into their address, because you can tell who's the owner of these addresses today. It's going to be a fascinating, weird new world that we get to figure out. Yeah.
I have another question.
Yep.
So on the interoperability front, right? Like if the NFT NYC is minting a token, and people find they pay for it, and then they want to work with another event, they come up with a contract together, and then that token becomes an event token and gains value that way over time?
The value gets created over you guys. I created a platform that you guys can mint the token. The value comes from you. So if a big shoe company like Nike mints a free Nike ID shoe, then that token automatically has value because we trust Nike not to mint 100 million and then not accept it. The value is I trust Nike to redeem this shoe. I could burn that shoe and actually get a shoe sent to me. That's more the field that I'm in. And then the value gets even weirder is like, if a game says, hey, if you can redeem a Nike shoe here, it can make you run faster in my RPG game that does X, Y, and Z. I think the value of things can actually increase the more people start participating. And that game doesn't have to ask Nike for permission. And I think that's the fun world that we're heading towards.
So is it kind of like the user's responsibility in this case to check which contract has actually minted their NFT?
Pretty much. I mean, like someone publishes, if you respect someone on Twitter and they publish, hey, this contract was just created by X, Y, and Z, get the tokens now, you can do that. So I think there's definitely going to be a need for integration with like 3box to be able to say, okay, this ID was minted by this person who's verified by X, Y, and Z, and that's all going to start coming, I think, with the maturity of the Ethereum network. But everyone trusts Peter, who runs the Meta Cartel, and no one had any issues with basically getting to the wrong spot.
Yeah, I guess it works pretty well in closed systems. I'm just like, it's just because like you made the emphasis about interoperability, so I was wondering how that would work without a trusted registry.
Without a trusted registry?
Without a trusted list of contract types.
The trusted list comes from, okay, someone trusted that they put out a Medium article from this, and then on that Medium article, there's a link that goes to that trusted piece. Of course, there's going to be scammers. People are going to duplicate and try and recreate that process, but I mean, that's the way the internet works. I mean, we have to do our own verification, and I guarantee you with this system, I'm going to have a lot of people probably having the same issues. But at the end of the day, I've gotten Nigerian princes have stopped emailing me at this point, and we get smarter over time, and that's not my role in this world to figure that out. Yep.
Are you actually planning to kind of decentralize the hosting of the actual creative? I assume it's on your server right now.
Yeah. So the struggle I've had this last year building this company is figuring out what to do as decentralized and distributed. Of course, I started this adventure saying everything needs to be decentralized and distributed. Then I realized even the token itself, I figured when you redeem the token, like you have to actually change the state from redeemed, from pending to redeemed within the token and spend gas every time someone, and I was like, that's overkill, man. This is a guy who runs a Meta Cartel thing who, so that was all done on a central server. You just have to figure out what's important to you and realize that if I don't want to sacrifice a user not being able to load a page because IPFS can't figure out itself, then I'm going to host it on my own stuff. I think interoperability is the most important thing. And I think the metadata that holds the token is just helper stuff, to be honest. Like, yeah, you can still copy an image, but that token is the uniqueness. Like the image of the chili and the blah, 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 that's just to like get you oriented with a token. But the reality is that little core piece of the token, that's the unique thing that gives us scarcity, ownership, verifiability, and all that fun stuff. You just gotta, sure. Eventually I would love it to all be on something IPFSE. Yep.
What do I need to run an event using like Mintbase in terms of like any physical devices at the location, or can I just run a can I just have my phone at the event scanning people?
Yeah, you just go, so your redeemer is, you just go to, oh, it doesn't zoom on the URL. Mintbase, redeemer, your smart contract, that's the redeemer, and then to accept it, you just go R, and then whatever your, when you create your smart contract, you have your, I forget the name of it. Oh, no, I don't, it's right here. Shoot, NFTC, I'm guessing? So it's your token symbol, so I think it's NFTC, I hope it is. Yep, there it is. So that's the redeemer part. And so people check in through that. And eventually this is going to be dynamic and run. I don't have any tokens on this, so it won't load anything. Yep. I think I'm out of time for the next human. Sorry.
Hi y'all, thanks for sticking around. Year 3, year 10, year 2 of NFTs. I'm glad to get some updates around the ecosystem, especially the sort of slicker user interface stuff we're seeing from Nate. Very, very exciting. I'm going to talk today about some of the newer formats, standards, things that are available with NFTs through new frameworks. You see your mouse? Yeah. Maybe just drag them. There he is. Cool. So I'm going to talk about application-specific NFTs on Cosmos. And what does that mean exactly? Application-specific. One of the things it means is specialization. So as you can see with this Swiss Army knife, sometimes you have problems when you try to do everything all at once. Sort of the school book history of humanity, evolution, specialization is a really exciting aspect of this world. The fact that each person is able to sort of specialize and do something really well means that we get things that are done really well. I think we can all recognize that's a really great part about this world. For example, this fingernail clipper that's only useful for horses. You know, this is a very specific device. You would never find it inside of this Swiss Army knife. So you can see that certain things really need to be designed exactly for their purposes. And we've run into a lot of problems with different types of blockchains and application settings which try to do a lot at once. There's obvious benefits to this, and I think there's a time and place for these sorts of things, but I do think that for certain use cases, it's much better to let your resources match your needs. Application-specific also means self-sovereign. If you're running your own blockchain, you kind of have your needs exactly fit to the user group who's using them and exactly what they need. Something that you can see happen in an alternative situation is a conflict of interest, say like the DAO fork, so the Ethereum fork from the DAO. This was a big group of users who said this application is meant for this thing, it should be doing this thing, something unintended happened, we should roll back. Some other people said, no, this is a disinterested blockchain, this is code is law, how dare you. There was a disagreement. You know, they had different uses for the same space, and they couldn't come to an agreement, and so there was a fork. If, say, there was a DAO blockchain that was specifically designed to do this one thing, all of the users agree that it was not doing that thing, they would change it to update it. There's no conflict of interest because everyone is self-sovereign. They have the identity and the application sort of attached to the use case. One of the other things that kind of comes with application specific is the Cosmos SDK. So this as a larger concept doesn't need the SDK at all. Substrate is a great framework. You can build a private EVM chain. You could build a Ruby on Rails app if you really wanted to call it a blockchain. You could maybe get into an argument about that, but maybe you even can do it. We at Cosmos have built an SDK for building blockchains and trying to take care of sort of the messy parts. If you roll back to, say, 2010, 11, there was a lot of people trying to make new blockchains from the core idea of Bitcoin, but this is extremely difficult. I don't know if anyone had the same problem, but all you could basically do is tweak the minting thing, and you essentially had the first wave of shitcoins.
what was really great with Ethereum is that you sort of sidestep that problem of being able to design a blockchain to do exactly what you wanted by creating this virtual machine. So I can actually just design software to do exactly what I want, and I don't have to worry about the mechanics of consensus and networking and everything like that. But you sort of run into some of those other problems that I mentioned when you have shared spaces. And so luckily we're at a point now where the consensus and networking have been figured out to a large degree, at least for most use cases. So why not let the user focus on the application state similar to the EVM, but let them actually have the entire blockchain designed for their use case as well. So the SDK is a framework for trying to make that useful. But I'm here to talk about NFTs. So inside this toolkit of building blockchains, you get sort of all the common pieces. The most common one you'd think is the coins. So that's called the bank module in the SDK. But things like governance come with it, staking and slashing, like I mentioned before. And a common component that I was sort of excited to see in this context is the NFT module. But before I get into the details of exactly what this NFT module is and why it's maybe useful in a context of application-specific blockchains, just wanted to touch on the fact that NFTs are really just unique IDs. So at the end of the day, we're dealing with all of these different scarce assets. This is just a scarce asset that has a unique ID. And what's really exciting about that is that it really covers so many different use cases. So you've got Matt talking about the sort of more esoteric ideas of digital ownership and sovereignty. You've got Charlie talking about really brass tacks sort of business use case. These are assets that just don't happen to be fungible. And then you've got Nate talking about sort of the more real everyday use of objects, because I think I even heard this from Matt. If you think about the world around you, almost every object is non-fungible. So let's just think of them as UIDs, unique IDs. The Cosmos SDK is written in Golang. If you're familiar with that, we sort of use types. Just to give you very, very quickly technological overview of the framework and the system, and then talk about why in a second. The types inside of an NFT module are basically the base NFT, and inside there you can see really there's just an ID and an owner. We hold on to this token URI, which is a holdover from 721, which is a really useful kind of mechanic. But I'd like to sort of get into more about that as a concept during the panel. Otherwise, we have an interface. This makes it a little bit more extendable in other contexts in Golang. Basically just what are the commonalities. Collection is just a group of NFTs, collections of collections for organizational purposes, and a group of NFTs for organizational purposes. In Cosmos SDK parlance, I don't know if you're familiar with developing on Ethereum, but in Ethereum you kind of have a bunch of contract functions. Some functions change state, and some functions just read state. Instead of thinking of them as functions, we call the ones that change state messages, and the ones that read state queryers. Basically, you can send a message to update the state, or you can send a querier which will read something from the state. So when it comes to NFTs, you really only have a few things that you actually want to do across all projects. And when I'm talking about NFTs, this idea of the UID, this is trying to boil down exactly the common point between every aspect of an NFT, because you're going to have games, you're going to have ticketing, you're going to have invoices. What is the commonality between them to make this, in two senses of the word, interoperable? Interoperable in the sense that you're agnostic to the context, because when I think of blockchains, I mostly think of public infrastructure. Why does it need a blockchain? Basically, if it's something that no single human should be responsible for making sure it still works, it should be a blockchain. So when we talk about Nate's project, I like to think of that as using almost like public utility works to run a business. No longer do you need to rely on specific businesses to run their infrastructure or have an economic model. You can use like public utilities to make sure that this system runs. And the more you can offload on that public utility, the more robust and resilient a system's going to be. So what is the kind of like commonality in those public systems that you need to think of when dealing with as wide of a use case as possible? And generally, it's the ability to transfer ownership. It's the ability to sort of edit some aspect of it, and the ability to create or destroy. Obviously, different use cases will use or not use these different aspects, but to try to make the SDK as simple as possible, by default, we allow anybody to call these in any time. Please don't do that when you actually build a blockchain. Inside of the SDK, we kind of think of things as going messages, handlers, keepers. Messages are these things that kind of update state. Handlers are what like sort of figure out what to do with that thing. They're handing it off to keepers. And keepers are the store value. They're actually storing the values after they've been handed off. So typically, you would have this switch function inside of an SDK app, which grabs these messages and then decides how to handle them by throwing them to these handle functions. Inside the handle function, they'd probably hit a keeper. So usually, you would just have one for each message type. And like I said, inside of the NFT module, we sort of say, we are unopinionated about how you're going to use this NFT. You know, we let every single message type do its own thing without any sort of restrictions on, are you allowed to do that? Should you do that? Is this possible? So we think that you should actually design the handler yourself. And this is where you add your logic. So I've copied and pasted the default one that has no restrictions. But if you look really, really closely, one of these things, instead of handle message, blah, 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 one says custom at the very back. So that means that in this one specific context, which is minting NFTs, I've decided to add some custom logic, how to handle this message. And that's written right here. So this very specific one is for a demo app called the Cosmic NFT. And this has a handle message mint NFT custom, which checks if right now, the second that this transaction is sent, is Twilight, according to UTC. If it is Twilight, this NFT will get minted. You will be able to mint this astral body. However, if not, you will get an error, can't mint astral bodies outside of Twilight. And this sort of allows you to have a really flexible permission system around what is an otherwise very, very wide open system of creating, deleting, transferring, or editing NFTs. Because I think these are the real sort of common components across projects. So what's still agnostic? How do these things still coexist? This brings up a question of like, what should be application specific and contextual, and what should be application specific and agnostic? What should be agnostic are the things I keep repeating, those four, the transfer, the mint, the burn, because those are the ones that are going to be common across things. Of course, they might not all actually work because you've had different handlers. So then what really should be agnostic, or who should care about being agnostic? I think one of the biggest use cases of agnostic agnostic users are exchanges. An exchange like OpenSea wants to be able to allow as many different NFTs to show up, have zero prior knowledge of their existence, but still somehow fulfill showing and allowing them to work in their system. On the far other end of the spectrum, you might have a very contextually specific game item that, sure, I own the sword in this one game, but when I show up in this other game, they maybe are able to detect that sword, but they just don't give a fuck. They've never encountered this game. They have no partnership with these two things. They own the interface. It's up to them whether they want to acknowledge the fact that this ownership exists, similar to sort of Nate was talking about. You know, the trust is in the user. The infrastructure is there just to allow that data to be seen independently and know that nobody can block you from accessing it. But you still have the other side who's like willing to acknowledge it and do something with it. And so it's constantly, I think, this sort of battle between being agnostic and context specific. And the thing that's common between these, this NFT module, is the one that should be as agnostic as possible, where more likely if you're going to build a blockchain that has game assets, you should build another module that has all the specific cool things your NFT can do, while still keeping inside of that module the core aspect of the transferability, maybe the mint, the burn, so that when you show up at the exchange and you say, hey, I don't know who you are, I don't know what your blockchain is, but I know how to craft a transfer message. So I'm going to let you do that, and then you send it off to wherever you want, because that's the chain that you're talking to, and that's what you care about doing. So what's possible with a custom-built chain? There's a lot, I'd say, but mostly it's up to you. There's still blockchains, so don't go too crazy, but it's a little exciting building with this sort of new paradigm, because if you're familiar with building on Ethereum, it's a bit like being a ninja, where you try to touch the code as little as possible, and you're like trying to sneak silently through the night, not accruing gas. In this context, it's a little bit more like developing on Ruby on Rails or something, which I don't know if you've ever done, but the first time I sort of built an app in that context, I was just like, I can do anything. I can build anything. Like, I know jujitsu. I can build Facebook. And you get that a little bit here, where you're not restrained in the same way. You're like, well, what should I throw in there? Like, I can literally build an application. You don't think about it as building a blockchain. It's building an application. Of course, you really should be realistic. At the end of the day, it is going to be distributed, and you don't want to store the entire kitchen sink. With that in mind, there's the topic about metadata, and it brings up this question of, somebody asked it in the audience earlier, like, are you going to be hosting this metadata? Like, the metadata is kind of the glue between the real world and the public works. At this point, we've sort of shrugged off the responsibility in the context of Ethereum because it's just too expensive to store that stuff on chain. So it becomes this sort of question of responsibility. Is IPF's going to store it? But you haven't even fixed that problem in that context because IPFS doesn't have Filecoin. Who's going to pay to keep IPFS up? IPFS is just a server that you are pretending you're not responsible for. Like, you still definitely are. You're not going to run it. Nobody's going to run that for you. So how do you figure that out? Maybe you can store it on a blockchain. Maybe you could do it application specific because you have a blockchain which only does this one thing. Maybe you can put all the metadata in it. That's great. Should you? This sort of comes down to your use case and exactly when and how and why you're going to do it. And that's on this sort of contextual side of things still, because I would like to say have the sort of default open panel for, yes, check the metadata on the blockchain, but I still think probably at this point it's unrealistic to really expect any of those blockchains to return with metadata. But this is something where I'd really like to see in the next 10, 3, or 2 years to see updates. So I think that's it. Here's stuff about Cosmos if you want to do the QR things. I don't know if you do that, but that's out there. I'm really excited to get these people up because I have a lot of questions for them. I think this is a good opportunity for really, those soul-driving questions. If anybody else has, please, I encourage you to participate. But thank you very much.
Okay, we're just gonna move some chairs up here to have the team answer some questions. But we wanted to open up the floor to a few projects maybe that are doing work with NFTs or people who have announcements. You want to come up? Anyone else interested? Anyone else doing project work on NFTs? Marco?
Email to Carlo, usually organize the meeting. Send me an email there and I'll move this all in. We're going to be gone for about a month in Japan for Electron, so all of October will be gone.
Alrighty. Thanks for giving me this little spot here, Michelle. I'm going to give you guys a little lightning talk on NFTs and mobile gaming. So a cool thing happened recently. 6 weeks ago, Cheese Wizards opened up this CoinList hackathon. And it opened up the floor for you to just build on top of Cheese Wizards, the NFT game, and just spread your wings and ideate whatever you can. And think of all kinds of stuff that you, cool things that you can enhance the gaming experience with Cheese Wizards by doing. So what we did, the team at Alice did, was we built a mobile NFT in-person gaming mobile app that I'm going to demo to you now. It's just a quick little run through, but I think it's an awesome way to think of how we can use NFTs, kind of like what Digimon did when we used to get together and battle. Oh, damn it. 1 second. Okay, cool. So Alice is like a mobile wallet that you can build mini dApps inside of. And one of those mini dApps just happens to be Cheese Wizards. So we can tap into Cheese Wizards. Cool. We can tap into Cheese Wizards and see like all of my wizards. These are all NFTs. Let me turn off my notifications. These are all my NFTs. But what I can do with these NFTs is actually tap on them. And I have this NFT in my hand. Eventually, you'll be able to see the stats on the NFTs. So these NFTs have things like an element that's particular to them, also some stats of like how much power they have, because during the game of Cheese Wizards, you start to lose power, and when you've lost power, you get kicked out of this like tournament. So what we can do is actually flip this card over. And if I actually slide away this card, it reveals like the camera. So yeah, say hi everyone again. And I can scan this other QR code on screen. And that's someone else's mobile phone. So what I've just done is now like I've connected two wizards to each other. And I can send this guy a challenge and be able to like choose my element. So Cheese Wizards is basically rock, paper, scissors. And you pick 5 moves instead of just that one, like rock, paper, scissors. So you pick 5, and you're like serving them up on this platter over here. So you can, move them around, dismiss them. But I get 5, and I can send it off. And I have to write this down to remember. So fire beats wind, wind beats water, and water beats fire. And you get 5 moves and send it off. It's like, yeah, basically rock, paper, scissors, right? Smash that wheel of cheese, and then now you this is the smart contract call interface in Alice, kind of like MetaMask pop-up. And then you hold it out to send, and then that's how you start the duel. But unfortunately, it's not hooked up to the smart contract, so you get a lovely little error message. So that's pretty much like dueling in Alice, in-person gaming using NFTs. And all these cheese wizards are unique little NFTs. Also, we've built a cool little feature for if you don't have friends near you, or just friends in general, and you're stuck in a cave or something. You have this little location thing on the top left. You tap on that, and you go into the Cheesyverse. So what the Cheesyverse is like the world is exploded and turned into cheese, and the oceans have all melted and turned into molten cheese. And I can see other cheese wizards around the world. So this is a cheese wizard in Sydney. And this is why I really like the idea of digital scarcity with NFTs, because this particular cheese wizard is a moldy cheese wizard, and it's a rare cheese wizard. So that if I buy a rare cheese wizard, it means that I'm one of a selected few around the world who get access to this cheese wizard. And it gives me an advantage in an interface like this where I'm competing against other wizards to get clicked on, to get challenged so that I can gain more power. Because visually, I have this stimuli that differs my wizard from others, and someone is more likely to click on my moldy wizard to battle me. Yeah, and then I can also show you something cool. This is more like Alice specific, but it's like, if you do receive a challenge from someone, we haven't built this in yet, we've just kind of built the feature. But if you look on my phone, you'll see, oh wait. Okay, maybe it's not working. Anyway, I would get a push notification that'll come through. It's supposed to come through, no. Basically, I get a push notification, I tap on the push notification, and it goes straight through to the app, the Cheese Wizards app, so that I can click through and view what Cheese Wizard challenged me. So it's in-game notifications. Thanks for listening to my talk. Just wanted to share that. Cheers. Also, any questions, because I did call the Cheese Wizard NFT creator and ask them a few questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that you have a phone there. How are you utilizing phone?
So Foam, basically, you click in on Foam and you can view all of your point of interest, regular point of interest. But what we kind of pitch to them is if you get a push notification, if you enable push notifications, you can get notified if your point of interest was challenged. Because a lot of people were losing money because they weren't being notified that their point of interest were challenged. So I wish the notification thing was working. I'll show it to you later if you want a demo, but I'll try one more time.
So how's that relevant to the game?
The Foam game?
Well, to your cheese game.
To the cheese game, if you get challenged by someone else, someone clicks on you in the Cheesyverse, and you're not on your phone, you've just chose that cheese wizard as your default wizard to battle, you will receive a push notification, and it'll notify you in your your pocket, which is cool. I think it's another step in user experience that we don't really think about is accomplishable with blockchain. But I'm going to get off stage because I'm taking up time.
Okay, so we have like a few more minutes, probably about 20 more minutes. We're gonna, do you guys want to come up? Yeah. And Charlie, yes. And Nate. We're chatting. And hopefully we can chat with you guys. I have one other one. So basically, this opportunity was to talk a little bit more. We kind of went through projects, but now we wanted to talk about first whether it was 2 or whether it was 3, but also a little bit about NFTs and how they're going to evolve over time, and also talk about a little bit about the use cases in enterprise and things like that. So we were all supposed to come with a fun fact about NFTs, but I think maybe you were the only one that came. I came with no fun fact other than we got the birthday Twitter storm going.
Yeah, so I think we should go through these stuff quick because this is supposed to blend into drinks and casual things, and I'd really like this to be more interactive, and it's always a little hard to do panel that style. So maybe we run through kind of the hot topics and give hot takes, but then really we should all be talking afterwards.
Spicy takes, please.
Exactly. I wanted to touch at the beginning of sort of like where are we now, statistics-wise. It's been about 2 years since the Ethereum NFT. I luckily discovered yesterday that it's almost 3 years exactly since the counterparty version of NFT. So my huge gaffe on calling 3 years that are actually 2 is correct. I cannot be wrong. So that's kind of my hot fact. NFTs, at least on blockchains, originated unique IDs on September 29th, 2016 with Rare Pepe on Counterparty. Anybody else? I know you weren't prepared probably with a hot fact. Any facts come to mind? Anything you've seen change a lot over the last 2 years, let's say?
I don't know. I have a hot take about the birth date of NFTs because Bitcoin is non-fungible, and we didn't really call it that at the time, obviously. And we practically Bitcoins are fungible. 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin, except if it's been blacklisted from a hack or whatever, then we can identify it because just like a dollar bill, they've all kind of got serial numbers on them in the sense that these UTXOs are part of the data model and can be tracked as unique objects. But yeah, I would say like the concept of a scarce digital thing that is unique in the world is I hilariously and fantastically, I guess, started with a meme becoming reality. It's just like this hilarious idea of we have the meme of the Rare Pepe, pre-alt-right, and are like, what if, the whole joke about Rare Pepes is of course they're not rare. They're images, everyone's seen them. Like my favorite one is like, is like wrapped in tinfoil and it's like never before seen by human eyes. And it's like, well, of course not. Or like, of course it has been, right? It's a dumb meme. But then we made them actually scarce, and that's like kind of funny. But that's like, yeah, that's the origin story. But
I feel like that's kind of dictated the narrative for a long time. It's why I'm always excited to see what Centrifuge is up to. It's sort of one of the least meme-worthy cases, but I'm just curious, do you know other projects that are very un-memey about their use of NFTs? I'd say Ethereum name service is a very un-memey version, sort of a utility infrastructure. Maybe the way Urbit uses them for namespacing their sort of private server property systems. Any other ones come to mind for you in that context?
I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm, but I really don't know of any other companies that I can think of or projects off the top of my head that are really using them in the way we are, kind of in the real world case. Just because like a lot of the issue, like we literally had to create Tinlake in order to use them in the way that we do. And I think, I guess like maybe for your first question of how they've evolved, I think that they have evolved, like I think in the beginning, maybe because they arose from memes, it was very like in this kind of collectible art format. And now we're seeing a lot more of the utility usage of NFTs. And I think, yeah, for us, I don't know, like Zero Knowledge, Tinlake, I would say like those are, I don't know of any other projects doing that.
There's going to be Ethereum.
What?
Ethereum, I don't know if they use them, but what is surprising if they don't?
What is Materium?
Their property on the blockchain.
Ah, yeah, classic. Yeah, I could add some more themes. Yeah, I mean, property, supply chains, the classic art world is very not meme-y, even though the whole art world is just a meme.
Ticketing. I mean,
Ticketing, yeah. Yeah, I mean, pretty much anything that revolves around history of a thing or owning this thing that isn't, a collectible, anything that can be valued in terms of its utility function or its speculative value, aka value to someone else, probably moves away from the meme. Actually, memes are pretty speculative. Yeah, so just utility then.
I mean, it really brings up this appraisal question, which is very much at the core of Centrifuge, is how do you appraise? I think appraising non-fungible things is much more difficult.
Classically hard problem.
I think it all comes down to the redeemer. Making proper redeemers, making open source NPM libraries that, let's say, a big shoe company can just import and say, watch this contract, and then watch, maybe these unique IDs, check to see if they're the owner of it, and creating smarter redeemers to be able to move these things throughout the system. So.
And I mean, actually one project.
Does this even work? Hello?
Yes.
Now, one project that I know is using NFTs is a lot is Molecule. So they're using it for patents. And I think, actually, this is maybe a juicy tip, I don't know. But I was having dinner with a colleague of mine previously from the law stuff who works with the European Patent Office. And they recently also had a big blockchain seminar where I think, at least in the IP world, in the patent world, a lot of people are talking about how NFTs might be used in conjunction with how IP sees assets now and transferring patents around different databases, et cetera. So.
And the key is getting that group of humans to start taking NFTs seriously too. Every time I tell someone, I built an NFT building tool, everyone kind of gives me that like eye roll of like, oh great. But I think when we start seeing people being able to redeem these things for things, yeah.
And like, what other maybe legal examples because you have a background in law, are there other use cases outside of patents maybe that you see, or that you see at least areas where like it could work for?
I mean, I think, like you brought up escrow. So like we use the NFT we use it as technical collateral, but in the case of like when you do big deals, like there is something called an escrow contract typically, both parties. This is like a huge amount of money that a lot of people are making off of, like lawyers are making money off of basically watching this money. So like things like NFTs. Yeah, I mean, it's a great job. I don't know why I left it. And I mean, even if you think about transacting, not just IP, but also assets in general, like transactions, being able to capture value in a way that really models, like technically has the underpinnings to model this kind of non-fungible asset is pretty much a legal revolution, I would say.
I mean, pretty much anything that we own could benefit from digital scarcity, even physical things that you want the ability to transact across borders at like zero counterparty risk and transaction cost, etc. Like even physical things, analog things, can get the benefits of digital scarcity. Like there is a question of the link between them, which this is like the chip in my hand is a little experiment for. But assuming we can create that bridge, then you can get the benefits of digital scarcity with physical objects where you have like, actual assets that people care about. That was related somehow in my head.
What was next on our list? I think everybody's pretty.
Does anyone else have any questions? No?
Yeah. Spicy hot takes? No?
Good.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is anyone going to give a shit 5 years from now?
On NFTs?
Is anyone going to care about truly owning their digital stuff?
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
Break that down. Tell me more.
All right, so the internet doesn't have these things. You said the internet doesn't have, scarcity doesn't exist on the internet. Ownership kind of exists. Interoperability, the only thing that's interoperable on the internet is single sign-on, right? Maybe on one website you can single sign-on with Facebook. That's literally the only interoperable asset. Every time I talk about NFTs, I have the slide up there that says scarcity, interoperability, and ownership. Like, well, only maybe 2 people out of a giant room understand how important that is. I think that scale will definitely increase over the next several years because it's really important, but kind of hard to explain to people because interoperability, I tried to explain my application to my mom, and my mom says, you can't use that word interoperability. I don't understand that word. It's big, long, and it doesn't make sense. And I refused because it's a very important word. So if people don't understand it, then I have to stick on it and really explain what interoperable means. My pitch, I'm starting to do the fundraising round. I'd say half of the pitch is basically focused on that word interoperability now. So big.
But what does digital ownership mean for you then?
Ownership means, so when I log into Netflix, I don't have ownership of my subscription, right? I'm leasing space from Netflix. I'm leasing time. I'm having a subscription. I don't own my subscription. I think in the future, we will own our subscription. It's going to be a little card that your browser checks to say, are you the owner of this here NFT card? And what ownership means doesn't mean that Netflix can take it back whenever they want. I can say, well, I'm done with Netflix. I can go to OpenSea and sell my subscription to someone else. I could say, well, I'm going to Mexico for a couple weeks and they don't have Netflix down there. I'm going to send it to my buddy for a couple weeks. I'm going to send this thing for a couple weeks into a marketplace where other people can rent my subscription for a little bit. That's ownership. That does not exist on the
Is that like a better world, though? Yeah.
It's funny, that makes me think of all of the radical market stuff where it's like property is monopoly. That the more you own something, sort of the less liquid it is, and the more you can sort of hoard it and basically artificially create scarcity or trapped resources that push or squeeze on other participants in a way. So
I mean, the logical conclusion, not the logical conclusion, the logical infinity of that statement is property is theft, which I quite like as a explanatory way of doing it. But yeah, totally. There's like a lot of negative sides to scarcity as well.
But it's funny that you can talk about ownership being the idea of actually owning it or the ability to sell it, which is the opposite. You know, it's.
I mean, it's like it can be either positive, like you own something, or it can be an exclusionary or negative right.
Right.
Which is that you can prevent others from, et cetera, et cetera.
100%. I think it's 2 sides of the same coin. Yeah.
And why would someone want to buy my subscription to Netflix?
Because that gives them access to see all the beautiful videos, right? And maybe they don't want, maybe they just want to rent it for a week, and because they have a Netflix hoarding issue and they don't want to buy it. There's an infinite amount. But the value comes from, I get to watch movies. And so having the ownership of it, there's all sorts of...
Netflix has a monopoly on Netflix subscriptions.
So we could be the middleman.
Yeah. So do you think people, for example, the 98% of people who don't use crypto today or don't really care that, for example, their identities are leased from Facebook, GitHub, et cetera, or don't really mind that their all the things they think they own online or have access to aren't really theirs, do you think that normal people will begin to care about truly owning their stuff in the way that we care about truly owning our actual stuff?
I think that they will begin to care when these platforms that actually own their identities begin to exercise the negative rights.
Yeah, and also, I think there's going to be an explosion of creativity with how people do that. That's just the thing I throw out there, Netflix subscription. But hopefully a light bulb goes off in some people's minds of like, holy crap, now we can do all sorts of neat things. So is it going to be around in 5 years? I think once the explosion of people who figure out, hey, these 3 things, the interoperability, that's powerful. Once entrepreneurs hear of it, and all the stars align, like Ethereum gas doesn't go up to 30 Gwei every 5 seconds, and there's a lot of points to it, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'd say digital ownership is inevitable. Cute Thanos snap, but I'm wondering if people will care or if it'll be behind the scenes, sort of like
in the sense that we don't care what database so-and-so is built with.
But I think it's so hard to, I think it's like really hard to be so generalized, because I think it's for example, I don't necessarily care about owning a solar panel right now if I live in Berlin, but if I live in the middle of the jungle, etc., like I will care a lot about owning how I get energy. So I think it depends on what kind of scarcity is around and how much people care about ownership. In the end of the day, I don't know if they would care so much about, I mean, the NFT in the end of the day is it is a representation of something, right? So it's like, if what it is access to this something or whatever utility this something offers, and that becomes scarce, and the NFT represents this kind of digital scarcity, then they will care a lot, I think.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, totally.
I still can't help but thinking about ownership as being so specifically attached to selling. So like if I own my computer, say. This is a big question, and I think more people are sort of coming to this idea of like, should I own my own laptop? If it's going to get sort of outmoded by the technology in 2 years, maybe I should just lease my laptop for 2 years. What does that mean to pay less, but to always have a new laptop? Do you actually accrue too much risk when you actually own it yourself? Or is leasing actually just the same thing as owning it yourself, but knowing you can sell it at whatever the difference is for leasing it? Like, what does owning mean in that capacity? Like, oh, I finally really own my computer. I feel good about the fact that I own my computer. Or have I just lost out on the fact that now I'm responsible for this loss of value when I actually have to be the owner of it? Really the liberal part of that, or the liberating part of that, is being able to freely exit ownership. Like that's the sort of, it's like liquidity. Like ownership means that you can sell it. It's having a high liquid marketplace to move in between assets when it's no longer valuable for you.
But sometimes I think there is a trade-off. Like, I think you will always trade off responsibility against liquidity in a sense. Like, it's really hard to solve that kind of commons problem, I think. If you, for example, radical markets, if you say everything is liquid and there's no property, it's really hard to enforce responsibility, I think, for public goods as well.
So on that note,
Yep.
where do I guess we come to the conclusion that we're not sure if in 10 years they'll still be around, right?
I think it'll be around what blockchain they exist on.
Invested in digital scarcity and owning digital things being around. I'm very invested in this NFC chip being useful in the future. Very much skin in the game, haha. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see how it plays out. I feel like we're all very much. If you're in this room, you're probably down with the idea of digital scarcity, but it's sort of like, which path do we take to get there? / is the goal? Does that exist? I don't know. Terrible metaphor. Yeah, someone else take that home.
Or at least you're down with like an Excel file that has IDs next to items.
Hell yeah. If you hash that Excel file and chuck it in like a ledger, I'm super down. Yeah,
it's all the same. It is a ledger. Cool. Thanks,
Excellent.
everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for talking, everybody.
Yep, thank you.